this is what I've been given. What am I going to do with it? Okay, I'm Carl. This is my wife, Merilyn. I was diagnosed with ALS in January of 1994. Now, it was actually the second opinion. First guy was a good clinical
diagnostician.
Yeah, and he did a great job, but he never said anything, no words. So I just assumed he hadn't figured it out. I know that sounds bad because the second opinion is film. Anyhow, ended up at Virginia Mason with Dr. John Rabbits, and he never said it because when I went and saw him, partly because he had a drug study, and he thought if I qualified, I could be in the study. Well, I qualified, and the nurse who was heading up the study said the words ALS. On our drive home, we stopped at the mall and the bookstore and went to the medical book section, probably more for me than Merilyn, and read about ALS, and it was, I'm pretty sure I said, wow, this looks quite unpleasant.
Yeah.
But it described it fairly clearly, and at the time, not knowing I would live past that 3 to 5 year window, so we went home and figured we need to learn about it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why we thought of support group.
I think it was Virginia Mason who told you about it,
yeah.
that it existed in Seattle.
So there was a locally funded support group that had a monthly meeting in Seattle. After the second meeting, they told us that they had no more funding and were closing down. That seems bad, but we have met a few people at the meetings. One being a wife of a man who was on a vent. His name was Edie Hepler, and Steve was her husband, and met a universal designer named Susan Duncan. And she comes up throughout our story about where we had talked at the end of that last meeting. And so subsequently, she contacted the National ALS Association, who at that time were out of Calabasas, California, somewhere like that. And got started on what they called a freestanding support group. Yeah, you were a support group, and you could raise money, but you sent it to the national. And then we got hooked up with
It was a Highland Community Center in Bellevue, on Bell Red Road. I think it's still there.
Yeah.
But they, for the next 14 years, 14, 15 years, gave us a room for free on for our monthly support group, general support group, and for a caregiver group, which we started in 1999.
When I think about how the chapter started, I think about Carl and Merilyn and that first support group. That was where really the whole concept of people caring for other people began. they gathered together other people who were like them, who had been diagnosed with ALS and were loved ones of people who have been diagnosed with ALS. And they came together to support one another and just to listen to each other and to laugh together and maybe sometimes actually to cry together. And that's really where it all started. People caring for people, whatever the journey was going to bring.
So Thursday night, once a month for the general, and then one Saturday a month with one of their employees had to come open it up. So they were really good to us.
And it was while we were there during that early period where many people were being diagnosed and being referred to us. And they would travel from as far away as Marysville and Bainbridge Island and Chehalis. I mean, we had people from all over the region coming to that meeting.
When my brother-in-law was diagnosed with ALS, we were devastated and overwhelmed. We really didn't know what to do next. Once I found the ALS Association, I began attending both the PALS and the caregiver support groups. And they became a lifeline for us.
And our most highly attended just regular meeting, there were 58 people, which at that point really ceases to be a support group. It's more of an event. But it was still at that point where we still had not hired.
Well, no, we were. It was Merilyn
care
and I
coordinators.
using our computer. We put out a monthly newsletter. I basically would find articles, cut and paste, and print it off on a copy machine somewhere. Fold them up, mail them out.
And we would have our neighbors and Carl's mom and
yeah, we get friends and
stuff envelopes
family.
and prepare the mailings. It was pre good computer days.
Our fundraising was a failure. We tried one, it didn't work out. But then a man, in memory of his wife, handed me a $5,000 check. So I sent it to the National. Well, they're like, hey, you guys should become a chapter. I said, hey, no. I didn't want to. It was enough doing it because we were also collecting equipment. And to be able to use the facility in Bellevue, we had to have a Bellevue mailing address. So I had a P.O. box and a storage locker for equipment.
In Bellevue.
In Bellevue. So I go up there every week, get mail, get equipment that I needed. Eventually we met people, late 90s, a man, good friend, the company that leased out construction trailers. He said, we could put one in your backyard. So he donated a 28-foot construction trailer. I can't believe they got it in the yard, but they did. And we filled it with equipment.
As we grew, I don't think we ever lost that core concept of people helping other people, because what happened next was people started bringing medical equipment that maybe they had used and no longer needed, and they would just drop it off at Carl and Merilyn's house. And that's how we actually started. At this point I was started to get involved a little bit, where we started to figure out that, gosh, we have this wonderful equipment and we could start an equipment loan program. And it started just that simply. People saying, hey, I got this piece of equipment and I want it to be useful to somebody else. I want to help somebody else with, you know, maybe it was a walker or a wheelchair or a cushion. Just something that people, they felt like could really use and that would really be helpful to them, or to their caregiver taking care of them. So all this stuff started coming our way. And from that, we just really started helping people.
And then at that time we started having, well, before that, we'd have a yearly barbecue in the backyard. And every time we'd have that, we'd tell people, look, while you're here, if there's equipment you need, just go in the trailer and grab it. And if you can't put it in your car, we'll bring it to you. So I collect power chairs, manual chairs, toilet seat risers, walkers, canes.
Hospital beds even back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a grassroots operation. And National kept bugging us, and then in 2000 or 1999.
2000 we started the...
But when was the fundraiser? Anyhow, one of those years.
98 and 99 we did some big events.
And then when people wanted to give us money, they started fundraisers. So some of them were very small, just maybe a raffle, and they had done an event, and that's actually when I got involved because they wanted somebody to write thank you notes. So that's how I started. And people just cared and wanted to help. And that money, those first donations that people gave us, we turned around and were able to hire staff that could go into people's homes and help them.
But the original one was a movie called Theory of Flight. The main character had ALS. It was okay movie, but it was a big fundraiser, or potentially, and we had connections in the local acting community, because one of our folks was an actor and his wife was an actor and actress. So we had to become an entity, a business, basically. So I drove back and forth to Olympia, getting the paperwork, filling it out, not correctly, going down and saying, no, you need this. So you need 4, at that time you needed 4 people to start a nonprofit company. And I was president. Susan, the designer, was vice president. Merilyn was treasurer, and our former neighbor Tina was the secretary. Now Tina actually had the skill set for that.
And I might add, she was the secretary for our chapter for 14 years.
So yeah.
She's a good friend, and
yeah. So I'm not president material. I wanna, if there's a problem, let's fix it. We don't need a committee. We don't need do we have the funds? Yes. Do we have the resources and people? Let's do it. Apparently that's not how it works. So I didn't want to go to meetings, and so I found one of the guys who was an actor friend of Bob, And I said, Mark, what do you think about you become president? As you can tell, I'm not built for this. And he was a good-looking, bright, dedicated to the cause guy, and as an actor could talk and be understood. And so he took over, and I got off the board. I wanted to be just one of the Army hands. Anyhow, we kept doing the support groups in Bellevue until, 2010, 11?
I do not remember what year it was. But we had, in the meantime, started a group here in our home as well. And to serve the local Kent area and the South End, basically, for folks who didn't want to travel. And so we were having 3 support groups a month for quite a while, quite a number of years. When, about the same time as the Highland Community Center was under new management and started requiring us to pay, at that same time, the support group in Bellevue was down to just one other family and us, and we elected to stop meeting there. And for the caregiver group, we moved to Bellevue College because at that time there was a gentleman with ALS whose wife was on faculty at Bellevue College, and she was able to get us classrooms from her friend who was the facilities manager. And so we continued there until the chapter office moved into a larger space with a conference room. And then we moved the caregiver group to meet in Kent on a Saturday.
Yeah. The office situation early on was in our house. Then I had a friend who had a flower shop, had a little office upstairs, and the ALS Association had someone paid for computers. So we had a computer, and I thought, we can't have people coming here, and I wanted someone else to work on stuff. So moved in this little office, and it was upstairs, and the whole walkway had rat traps. So I called it the rat trap. And then we, once we became a chapter
and organization,
I properly rented what was known as a cave. It was a interior office, no windows, a door. And we hired my sister-in-law, smart gal, no experience in this world, the world of charity, and I was her connection. And she was brilliant, and even more brilliant than we even knew. Became probably one of the better EDs in the country. People were calling her for advice, and she just did a great job. So,
for 20 years.
And we let go pretty quick as far as our baby had taken off. And, I think at one point we had raised revenues of $1 million. It was great to just do support groups, because that, working on the ground level with the people.
Some of the equipment that we were able to obtain from the loan locker were invaluable for us. We needed to consider a Hoyer lift and These were all things that we had no knowledge of before the support group.
Of course, as they got care services rolling, we did a little less, but once you're in a support group, these people become your friends and your family.
Yeah. I also continued on the board
Right.
until last year. And at various points in time, chaired the Care Services Committee, and have been in contact, of course, the whole time with the Care Services Director, because we're the only volunteer facilitators currently for the 23 support groups across our region now. So
volunteers came just amazingly forward to give their time and their talents to do all kinds of things. And, you know, talking about support groups, leading a support group or even hosting a support group or being the support group mom, so to speak, baking cookies, just showing up and making sure that people were there, really is an amazing amount of commitment in my mind, because ALS isn't an easy disease, obviously, for the people who have it and for their loved ones, but also for everybody around that person. And it's, I want to say work, but it's really an effort of the heart to do those support groups and be there for people. And people just bring that heart with them so that they can share and create a space where patients and caregivers and everybody around them can share and talk and, again, laugh and be together. Nobody should face ALS alone, really.
officially, once we became a chapter, it was 20 years.
We met in a house in Seattle, and that's where we met Mark, the first real president. Went to D.C., went to
Leadership conferences.
Yeah, conferences. In fact, our first conference as a support group, the night of the banquet, we thought, that's for the chapters, the big guys. We're just a support group. Yeah. We went out with some friends that had come down, and we got up the next day, and the chapter liaison or support group gal said, "Hey, where were you last night? You won a award." And we got
that one was freestanding support group of the year.
Yeah.
But under Becky's leadership, for the next 10 years, we, as a chapter in organization and a full chartered chapter, we received a number of awards just for growth and integrity type of things and different services.
And the people that got involved, family members, connections, just really, we had, the ride was developed by a family and friends up in Skagit Valley, Snohomish, Skagit Valley. And they contacted us, we got together. Well, eventually that ride inspired the national to make it something everywhere. And we had a lot of fun, met the best people I've met in my life. The top 10 best people are from my ALS group. Okay. Yeah. Most of the top 10. don't want to leave my ALS friends out, but there were just incredible people in a horrible situation.
Yeah.
And I hope and I think we provided a place for them to come and unburden themselves or find.
And I might add that we're still doing the support groups, but virtually since the onset of COVID. Thankfully, we'd had a little practice before that with Zoom, but it became a regular format for all of the support groups for the chapter, and what we've seen as time has progressed with this format is that a lot of people from a wider area are able to join.
Yeah.
So
And it's bringing people together and sharing our lives, exchanging our ideas and experiences, so we all don't have to make the same mistakes. 1,007. Ultimately you don't know, but as we think of the number of people that we've lost over 25 years, dozens.
And anecdotally, one year when I attempted the bike ride in Mount Vernon, the only way for me to make it up a very slight incline, I wouldn't hardly call it a hill, but I needed the motivation, and so I just started in my mind naming off all the people that we knew and had lost, and at that point it was 120, and this was back in the early 2000s. So you can incrementally add to that over the years, because we are meeting more people, really.
Right.
And still maintaining intermittent contact with family members and friends of those that we have lost. I don't know. Do not know how many.
Okay, 25 years times 24, because it was 2 support groups a month. Now, the people were caregivers would come to general, so whatever that is.
And for a while there were three a month. So
yeah,
so a lot.
Hundreds.
Yeah.
And then for
So
20.
I would say on average, if you account for the meetings in person we had to cancel for snow or illness, it's probably 24 a year. So 24 times 25. And we've always made ourselves available for people to call us between meetings. We definitely haven't, in fact, there are other people that haven't actually really even made it to meetings for various reasons that we have communicated with and helped, hopefully.
600
along the way.
support groups, I think.
Yeah.
600, yes. And we would, for a while, we would go pick people up. Because we had a band.
Yeah.
We had, how many did we have here once?
I think our biggest meeting in this room was 34 people.
So the healthy people sat on the stairs.
I think Gail remembers that one.
Yeah, oh yeah, you were there. And then every year for 20 years, we had a barbecue, and 50 people would show up.
Yeah.
And we got our friends involved and my family, and yeah, it's been our life.
Yeah.
We've been given so much. Apostle Paul, I think, someone in the Bible said, of those to with much is given, much is expected. So, in a small way, hopefully we fulfilled that to some extent. Because we have got way more than we've given. And it's hard to say we didn't sacrifice anything. It was a joy and a privilege to, and still is, to interact with this community and bring people together and help them if we can. If not, hopefully we know someone that can help them, and try to encourage, which isn't an easy thing considering no upside per se to this. Again, it's a perspective, it's how you look at it.
And that's what, to me, the core of the Evergreen Chapter has always been, is people reaching out to help other people out of their heart. And it's honestly a very joyful thing in the most difficult journey that people are facing.
This is what I've been given. What am I going to do with it?
It's been a very meaningful thing for me to be involved with the Evergreen Chapter, and it's been very honoring. I mean, I'm honored to have been able to do this work and to see all these people in the broader ALS community really show what their heart is all about.